mountain road at night feels endless. My headlights stretched only a few feet ahead, swallowed by fog that clung to the cliffs like pale smoke. On one side, the ground dropped into darkness, so deep it felt bottomless. On the other, jagged trees leaned in close, their branches scratching the thin air. There was no sound except the hum of the engine and the faint static on the radio that refused to catch a station. I remember slowing down because the air felt heavier, almost charged. The fog shifted in strange ways, pulling apart and curling back as though something was moving through it. My eyes kept catching flashes in the rearview mirror, glimpses of pale light far behind me, floating just above the tree line. Too smooth, too steady to be another car. The road twisted, my tires crunching gravel at the edge, and I told myself it was nothing, just the trick of thin mountain air, just headlights bouncing in the mist. But the light grew brighter, no longer behind me, but above me, moving silently. The static on the radio sharpened into a hum, like breath in my ears. And that's when I saw it, hovering in the fog, waiting just beyond the bend. The road was thin, winding, swallowed by fog. Cold air pressed against the windshield, dampening the edges of the glass. My hands gripped the wheel a little tighter, though I told myself it was only the chill. Headlights cut through the mist, white and shallow, revealing the dark shapes of pine along the mountainside. Everything beyond seemed soft, unreal, like the world had paused. I blinked, and there it was. A pale disk hovered above the pass, not moving, yet somehow closer than before. Its light was smooth, almost liquid, spilling across the fog in a quiet wash. I squinted, trying to judge its distance. But every time I blinked or thought I blinked, it shifted. A subtle drift toward me, almost patient. No sound, no hum, nothing but the wet hiss of tires on asphalt. The pass narrowed. A curve ahead loomed like a cliff's edge. I slowed, heart pacing and slow, shallow pulses. The disk was still there, pale and impossible, hovering just above the tree line. It made no sense. The fog seemed thicker around it, curling upward in slow spirals. Breath fog inside the car, warm against the chill. My eyes refused to look away. I tried to blink again, steadying my vision. When I opened them, it was closer, closer than any blink should allow. I could see the faint shimmer along its edge. The fog around it seemed almost alive, moving against the cold wind, curling toward the light. A branch scraped against the roof. I jumped. The disc didn't move. It didn't need to. It just waited. My hands shook. I pressed harder against the wheel, though I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. The road twisted beneath the tires, slick and winding, and still it hovered. Still it watched. The fog thinned for a moment, revealing the pass below, a drop steep and endless, black and silent. The disc floated above it, impossibly calm. I swallowed, tasting the cold metal of fear at the back of my throat. I blinked, and it was gone. No hum, no shimmer, no trace in the fog. Just the pass, quiet and empty, the wet asphalt reflecting nothing but my headlights. I exhaled. The tires whispered against the road. I told myself I'd imagined it. A trick of the mist. A reflection. My tired eyes playing with the shapes of trees and rocks. But then, a soft shimmer at the edge of vision. A pale flicker just beyond the next curve. I froze. Breath caught in my chest. I tried to focus, but the shape didn't remain. It vanished the moment I thought I saw it clearly, leaving only the fog and my shallow, nervous breaths. I drove slower now. Every shadow seemed too dark, every rustle in the trees too deliberate. The pass stretched endlessly, though I knew the map said it should curve down by now. And then I realized the air had grown colder, not just a chill of night, but something deeper, something alive in the fog. I could feel it brushing along my skin, soft as smoke, teasing the hair on my arms. I blinked, and the disc was there again, closer, not above the pass this time. It hovered just beyond the guardrail, pale light spilling over the edge, reflecting off damp stone. I wanted to look away. I wanted to close my eyes and pretend I had not seen it. But curiosity, sick, aching curiosity, kept me fixed. A slow pulse of pale light, almost like a heartbeat, spread across the fog. It flickered, uncertain, as though testing me. My own heartbeat echoed too loudly inside the car, drowned only by the faint, cold hum of nothing at all. I blinked, and it vanished. This time, I didn't dare look for it. The road ahead was empty, the fog curling softly around the curves. The mountains stood silent. The path stretched on, indifferent and dark. I drove on, slower than before. Every now and then, I caught a pale shimmer at the edge of the mist. Every now and then, I imagined its shape drifting closer, just beyond the reach of my headlights. But whether it was real or a trick of the past, or my own tired mind, I don't know. All I know is the memory of that light, pale and patient, waiting above the fog, will never leave me, and I don't think it ever will. The mountains pressed close, dark and steep. Fog curled low along the road, wet against my tires. I drove slowly, the night thick around me. Ahead, a tunnel yawned in shadow. Its entrance was blocked. Fallen rocks, rusted beams, but a faint light pulsed beyond. I should have turned around. I knew that, but something drew me closer. The air changed as I approached. Cool, damp with metallic tang. The smell clung to my skin, cloying, sharp. A low hum vibrated in the ground. Subtle at first, almost unnoticed. I crouched closer to the windshield. The fog twisted like smoke, curling to the trees, as if the mountains themselves were breathing. The light inside the tunnel shimmered, faint but persistent, against a jagged stone. I stepped out of the car. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. Each footstep sounded hollow, stretched, as if the tunnel swallowed sound before it could escape. The hum grew louder, not mechanical, not electronic, like static pressed against the skin, vibrating through the bones. I pressed a hand to the stone. It was cold, but not empty. Something quivered beneath my fingertips. Shadows rippled across the walls, flickering with the faint light. I saw shapes bend and stretch where no stone should move. I blinked, and the shapes paused. Or perhaps I had stopped. A soft wind whispered through the tunnel. It carried nothing but chill and the faintest metallic scent. I shivered. Every instinct screamed to leave, but my legs stayed planted. The hum became a pulse, soft, insistent, like a heartbeat buried deep inside the earth. I could feel it in my chest, in my skull. I crouched, almost to hear it better, drawn into the rhythm of something not meant to be found. The shadows shifted again. Now they were longer, thinner, stretching across the walls in impossible angles. I leaned forward. I could swear one reached for me. A finger of darkness, brushing against the edge of the faint light. A gust of air moved through the blocked tunnel entrance. The light flickered, then pulsed brighter, sharper, painting jagged shapes onto the rocks. I stepped back. Gravel skittered underfoot. I could feel the eyes of the stone on me, watching, waiting. The hum flattened into silence, as though the world had paused. My own breathing was loud. My pulse thudded against my ears. The shadows clung to the walls, not moving, but somehow alive. I could see the faintest shapes beyond the blockage, figures standing or kneeling or bending, but impossibly still. Their edges shimmered, warped by the light. When I blinked, they shifted just enough to remind me I wasn't meant to see them. I backed away. The tunnel seemed longer than it should have been, the walls stretching beyond memory. The hum returned, low and vibrating, pressing against the chest of anyone foolish enough to stay. I wanted to run. I wanted to drive away and never look back. And yet, I lingered, drawn to the faint glimmer beyond the stones. The air grew heavier. The fog from outside seeped through cracks, curling across the gravel like living smoke. Each inhale tasted metallic, like iron and dust, filling my lungs with cold. I realized then that the light had changed. No longer soft or pale, it shimmered like a wet mirror, reflecting shadows that shouldn't exist. Shapes rippled, twisting across one another. I blinked again, and one moved toward me, just at the edge of perception. I stumbled backward, boots scraping gravel. The tunnel seemed to sigh behind me, a subtle, creeping sound. The hum flattened again, leaving only silence and the faint taste of fear on my tongue. I jumped into the car. Doors slammed, tires skimming wet gravel as I drove away. The light faded behind me, and the tunnel returned to a forgotten, blocked state. But the hum stayed, soft, deep, vibrating through the mountains and the fog. Even now, long after the road has ended, I can feel in the quiet of the night, and I know if I ever drive past that mountain again, it will be waiting, shadows moving, humming just beyond the stones, always patient, always watching. The road was narrow, winding through the mountains. Fog curled low, clinging to the asphalt like wet silk. Headlights cut through it, pale and trembling. I drove slowly, aware of the night pressing close. The air smelled of damp pine and cold stone. Each breath left a mist inside the car. I noticed the headlights first out corner of my eye, a pair small and steady. Following behind me, I glanced in the rearview mirror. They stayed the same distance, just beyond my reach. I slowed, almost instinctively. The lights mirrored me. Every movement I made, they matched. Too exact, too deliberate. The path curved sharply ahead. Fog thickened along the edges of the road. The tires hissed softly against wet asphalt. The headlights behind me didn't falter. I blinked. A shadow moved beneath the beams. Or perhaps it was a fog twisting. A tree bent toward the road as though leaning closer. The car behind me didn't change, didn't pause. It stayed there waiting. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was another traveler, a driver lost like me, cautious in the fog. But instinct pressed against my chest. The lights weren't normal. They weren't human. I slowed more. The tires whispered against the wet curves. The engine purred softly, too loud in the thick, silent night. And still the light stayed. I glanced again. The headlights didn't blink. They didn't sway. They hovered perfectly, pale and patient. My pulse quickened. I tried to change lanes, to put distance between us. The road offered little room. I swerved slightly, heart hammering. The lights followed, mirroring every move, keeping perfect pace. I stopped. The engine ticked down. Fog rolled across the hood, soft and cold. I held my breath. The headlights stayed. Then nothing. No reflection. No shape. No movement behind me. I swallowed, tasting metal and fear. The car behind me had vanished. No roar, no shift, no sliding across the wet road. Just silence. I exhaled slowly. The fog pressed against the windows. The path curved endlessly ahead. I told myself it was gone. I wanted to believe it. But then, in the corner of my eye, a flicker. A pale reflection on wet asphalt. Something moved behind a tree. Something that shouldn't exist, stretching just beyond the fog. I looked in the mirror again. Empty. No headlights. No car. The road behind me was empty, silent, still. I pressed the gas. The tires hissed. The fog whipped around the mirrors and guardrails. Every sense alert, every nerve raw. I glanced one last time, and there it was. A faint glow just behind the next curve. Not a car, not human. Just light bending across the mist. Closer now. Closer than any blink should allow. I swallowed, tasting fear and damp air. I couldn't breathe. The pulse of the fog seemed faster, heavier. Every shadow along the path felt too deliberate. Every tree whispered with movement that wasn't wind. I drove faster. The headlights never appeared in the rear view, but the sense of being followed never left. Every mirror reflected my own face, pale and tense, but nothing else. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it had been a trick of the fog. Maybe tired eyes, stretched nerves, and winding roads. But the memory, the flicker of lights, the pause, the disappearance, pressed against my mind like frost. I passed a curve where a sign leaned crooked, rusted, and wet. A branch scraped the side of the car. I flinched, and for a heartbeat, I thought I saw headlights glimmer in the mist behind me, distant but patient. I dared not glance again. The road stretched ahead, empty, quiet, endless. Yet every now and then, when the fog curls low and the mountains hold their breath, I feel it, a presence behind me, watching, mirroring every move, waiting for the moment I stop, because I know then, when I do, it will be there again, lights perfectly aligned, patient, silent, waiting. The road curved sharply along the mountainside. Fog wrapped the switchback in a thick, white blanket. The tires hissed softly against wet asphalt, carrying me around the bend. Ahead, a pale light flickered. Soft at first, like moonlight spilling through clouds. But it hovered strangely above the guardrail, not touching the ground. I slowed. The cold air pressed against my face, damp and sharp. Breath fogged in the car, warm and sudden against the chill. I could hear the rustle of trees, faint and deliberate, as if they leaned closer. The figure became clearer. A shape floating just above the rail, glowing pale and uneven. Not bright, not solid. Flickering, like candlelight on water. My chest tightened. I blinked. It moved, or I thought it did. Edges seemed to pulse, as though the air itself trembled around it. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under boots. Cold mist clung to my skin, soaking sleeves and hair. The light flickered again, casting a pale glow on the wet stone. No shadow fell behind it. Nothing grounded it. I took a step closer. The glow pulsed in response. Faintly, leaving scorch marks along the guardrail. Metal sizzled softly under invisible fire. I pressed my hand to the rail. It was warm, almost alive. The figure tilted, swaying above the curve. Each movement was impossible, unnatural. My eyes strained to hold it. But the edges rippled and warped like heat over asphalt. A faint wind whispered along the pass. It carried the tang of ozone, sharp and metallic, curling into my nose. The figure flickered closer, teasing the fog. I tried to back away, but feet rooted to gravel refused. The pale light pulsed stronger. Scorch marks along the guardrail glowed faintly, like embers buried beneath ice. The fog seemed drawn toward it, curling in slow, deliberate spirals. Breath left me short, lungs tight with cold and wonder. I blinked, and the figure shifted again, closer still. Edges blurred, stretching thin, as if testing the boundaries of the world. The fog whispered around my ankles. Something moved within it, just beyond the light, too dark to name. I wanted to call out. Words caught in my throat. The only sound was my heartbeat, loud and ragged in the quiet night. A single, soft pulse from the light. It flickered, almost shy, then surged, throwing pale reflections across wet rock. I saw my own shadow, or what should have been my shadow, distort and twist, merging with the glow. Then it vanished. I stepped back, heart hammering. Gravel crunched sharply. The figure flickered again, swaying above the guardrail. Closer, closer, then it vanished. No trace, no hum, only the scorch marks, faint, glowing embers fading into wet stone. I swallowed, tasting fear and mist on my tongue. The fog curled tighter around the curve, swallowing the pass ahead. The trees rustled or pretended to, brushing against each other in deliberate whispers. I felt the air shift. Not wind, not breath, but a presence, cold, patient, waiting just beyond the fog, just beyond the curve. I didn't dare look back. The road stretched away, slick and empty. Tire tracks shimmered faintly in the mist behind me. I could feel it watching, though nothing moved. The mountains were silent. The fog pressed against the guardrail, curling like smoke. And somewhere, just beyond the reach of headlights, the pale light waited, flickering, patient, impossible, and yet undeniably there. I exhaled slowly, hands gripping the wheel. The switchback twisted ahead, wet and gleaming. Every nerve screamed to leave, but a lingering fascination kept me tethered. A memory of pale light, floating above the guardrail, burning faint scorch marks into stone. It would not leave me, and as I drove on, each turn of the tires whispered the same truth. Some things linger on the pass, waiting just beyond the curve, where fog and mountain meet, and light refuses to stay grounded. The road narrowed as I climbed higher. Fog hung low, curling around the pines like fingers. The air smelled of wet earth and cold wood, sharp against my skin. On a ridge, I saw it, a lone cabin, dark, weathered, abandoned for decades, or so I thought. But one window glowed, warm, flickering light spilling softly onto the snow-damp porch. I slowed, heart thudding. My breath left clouds in the cold night air. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. The smell of damp wood and mildew pressed against me. I could hear the wind rustle through the eaves, soft and deliberate. The window, just one, held movement. Shadows shifted inside, like someone pacing. Or waiting. I swallowed. The glow didn't warm the air outside. It only painted the frost pale. Each flicker revealed the faintest shapes. Too human to ignore, too wrong to recognize. I wanted to knock, to call out, but the words died in my throat. The cabin didn't breathe, didn't creak. Only shadows moved inside. I stepped closer. Ice crunched beneath boots. The fog curled around the cabin, thick and soft, brushing my hair and jacket. A scent of smoke, old and faint, whispered from the window. I blinked. The shadows paused. Or maybe I did. Time felt wrong here, stretched thin over decades of empty floors and hollow walls. The light flickered again, brighter this time. I could see shapes standing or kneeling just inside. Movement precise, silent, deliberate. No door opened. No floorboard creaked. Yet they shifted, as if guided by something unseen. I pressed my hand against the cold wood of the cabin's wall. It was solid, unyielding, and yet something vibrated beneath it. A hum, faint, like the memory of voices long gone. I stepped back. A soft wind brushed past, carrying with the tang of ash and mildew. Shadows swirled inside the window, longer, thinner, bending toward the glass. I could feel their eyes, though nothing had a face. Just shapes moving in patterns that shouldn't exist. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run down the ridge, back to the road. But something held me there. A quiet curiosity, tinged with the knowledge I shouldn't look. The glow pulsed, casting pale reflections across the snow. Each pulse seemed like a heartbeat, or a warning. I blinked, and for a moment, I thought I saw a face behind the glass. Not human, not fully formed. Smooth and pale, bending toward me. I recoiled. The window went dark. The cabin returned to its empty, silent state. Only the wind whispered through the trees, curling around the porch. I drove away slowly, tires hissing on wet asphalt. The glow did not return, but the memory remained. I think of it sometimes. In quiet hours, when the mountains seem empty and the wind is still, I can see that one window, lit against decades of decay. I can see the shadows moving inside, patient and silent. I wonder if anyone will ever see it again. If anyone will notice the warmth in a cabin long forgotten. I regret not staying, not knocking, not daring to look closer. But I know better now. Some windows are not meant to be opened. Some lights are not meant to be followed. And the cabin, with its single glowing window, waits on the ridge. Shadows shifting inside, always, silently, even decades later, even when no one drives past. The night was clear, or at least, it seemed clear at first. The mountains stretched around me, silent and dark. Cold air pressed against my cheeks, crisp with the scent of pine and frost. I stepped out of the car, boots crunching softly on the gravel. Above, the sky shimmered with stars, pale and constant. The wind whispered over the ridges, carrying the faint scent of wet stone. Then I heard it, a low hum, not from the car, not from the mountains, but something beneath the stars. A vibration that pressed against my chest, soft but insistent. I tilted my head, listening. The stars above me began to shift. Not in constellations I recognized. Patterns formed, pulsing brighter, then fading. They moved in ways the sky should not allow. A slow rhythm, matching the hum beneath my feet. I reached out, though there was nothing to touch. The air vibrated against my fingertips, soft as silk, insistent as breath. The hum pressed against my ears, then my chest, then my mind. I tried to blink. The sky shifted closer. The patterns of stars twisted, connecting in shapes I could not name. Lines bent and curved across the black canvas, pulsing brighter in sequence. A cold prickle ran down my neck. The mountains around me were still, but I felt their weight differently, like the earth itself was watching, holding its breath. I stepped back. The gravel shifted beneath boots. Air swirled, carrying the scent of ozone and frost. The hum deepened, now louder, vibrating through the soles of my shoes. Every nerve in my body hummed with it. I blinked, and I saw something beneath the pulsing lights. A shadow, faint, moving along the ridges. It twisted in ways that should be impossible. Its shape followed the star's pulses, stretching thin, fading, then reappearing. The hum grew sharper, like whispers pressed against the skull. I could almost hear words, too soft to understand, slipping in fragments through the vibration. Warnings? Names? Or only the memory of some long-forgotten sound? I crouched, pressing hands to knees, trying to steady my heartbeat. The cold seeped through my jacket. Frost collected on eyelashes. Every breath left a small cloud of warmth that vanished instantly into the night. The stars pulsed brighter. A wave of light rolled across the sky, faintly mirrored in the fog curling around the ridges. I could feel the vibration climbing through my spine, settling behind my eyes. Something moved in the shadows beneath the pattern of light. Not trees, not rocks. Something alive, patient, waiting. I dared not move closer. My instincts told me to leave. The road called me back, dark and winding, slick with mist. But I stayed, mesmerized, drawn to the impossible rhythm of the humming sky. The vibration became a pulse, soft at first, then insistent, then overwhelming. My ears rang. My chest throbbed with the rhythm. Every hair on my arms and neck stood on end. And then I blinked. The sky had shifted again. The stars formed a shape, vast and slow, moving across the blackness. It wasn't a constellation I knew, not a cloud or aurora. A silhouette of something immense, outlined by the pulsing light. Smaller points of brightness traced its edges, like eyes watching from the void. I stumbled back. Gravel scattered beneath my boots. The cold air bit my skin. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, vibrating through teeth and bones. I tasted iron in my mouth, the metallic tang of sudden fear. The silhouette stretched across the sky, then began to fade, leaving only the normal stars behind. But the hum lingered, soft now, like a heartbeat far away, pressing against the mountains and the fog. I drove back down the pass, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Every now and then I glanced at the sky. The stars seemed too quiet now, too still, as if holding back something I could no longer see. Even hours later, when the roads were empty and the mountains vanished behind me, I can still feel it, a vibration beneath my chest, a pulse beneath the stars, the sky watching, shifting, waiting. And I know, if I ever return to the mountains at night, it will be there again. The hum, soft but insistent, stars moving in impossible patterns. A presence above me, patient and silent, waiting. The road was empty, winding to the mountains under a pale moon. Fog clung low to the asphalt, curling around guardrails and rocks. The air smelled of damp pine and cold stone, sharp in my lungs. I slowed around a bend and saw them, a figure standing at the roadside, thumb raised in the faint light of my headlights. Tall, thin, motionless, waiting. I blinked. When I looked again, the figure hadn't moved. A simple gesture, but somehow unnatural. I pulled over. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. Cold air pressed in as I rolled down the window. The fog slipped into the car, damp and quiet. "Do you need a ride?" I whispered. The figure didn't answer. It only waved again. Slow, deliberate, patient. I swallowed. The shape flickered. Edges shimmered, like heat above asphalt, bending light around it. I leaned forward, trying to see their face. There was nothing. No features. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over the shape where a face should be. I blinked. It was still there, waving, waiting. The fog curled around the roadside, brushing my boots. I could hear it, soft, whispering, curling along the trees. The hum of tires on wet gravel sounded too loud in quiet night. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots, echoing against the mountains. The figure remained, waiting, patient. I blinked again. The edges of the shape flickered. I swear it stretched, thin and impossible, just at the edge of my vision. The fog seemed drawn toward it, curling up like smoke around its legs. I tried to speak. Words died in my throat. No sound left the car, only the faint whisper of wind through the pines. I reached out, just a hand, to see if it was real. The air trembled beneath my fingers, cold and soft, but solid. A vibration hummed through my bones. The figure remained, unmoving, faceless, impossible. I blinked again. It was closer, or perhaps I had moved forward without noticing. Edges stretched thin, warping against the fog. No footsteps sounded, but the gravel shifted softly beneath something. A gust of wind brushed past my face. Cold, damp, metallic. The fog twisted, hiding the figure, then revealing it still faceless, still waiting. A wave of terror pressed against my chest. I stumbled back. Boots skittered on gravel. The headlights from the car illuminated only fog and forest, nothing else. I dared not turn away. I dared not blink too long. Then I did. When my eyes opened, the figure was gone. No shape in the fog. No trace in the gravel. Only the road stretching empty and wet beneath my tires. I pressed the gas, tires hissing. The fog curled along the mountains like smoke, but the shape didn't return. I looked again in the rear view. Empty seat. No one. I swallowed hard. The car hummed beneath me. Every nerve screamed. Every shadow along the roadside whispered. I blinked, and in the corner of my eye, at the edge of the fog, a pale flicker, a hand waving, smooth and faceless. I didn't look directly. I dared not. The mountains pressed close. Fog clung to the trees, curling over the guardrails. I could feel eyes, or something like them, watching from the mist. I drove faster. The figure didn't appear in the rear view. It didn't need to. I could feel it. Patient. Waiting. I told myself I'd imagined it. That tired eyes, winding roads, and low fog had made me see shapes that weren't there. But every now and then, I catch a flicker at the edge of vision. A movement too precise. A hand, waving, faceless, pale, patient. And I know if I ever slow on that mountain road again, it will be waiting, waving. Shadows curling in the fog. A face that should be there, but isn't. I dare not stop. I dare not blink. The road was empty, winding to the mountains under a thick fog. The car's heater hummed softly, warm against the chill pressing through the windows. I reached for the radio, tuning through static. White noise filled the cabin. Soft, low, endless, but then fragments of voices. At first, I thought I imagined it. A word here, a syllable there, buried in the static hiss. I leaned closer. The word sharpened. Do not leave. I froze. The voice carried through the fog like a whisper pressed against my ear. No one else in the car. No one on the road. I swallowed. The heater ticked. Tires whispered on wet asphalt. And yet the word persisted. Faint, fragmented, broken. They spoke of things waiting in the fog. I blinked. The road curved ahead, slick with mist. I could see the faint outline of trees bending toward the car. The voices shifted. Warnings or instructions I could not fully grasp. Each time I tried to focus, they dissolved back into static. I turned the dial. Nothing but hiss. Then, again, fragments returned, sharper now, closer. Watch the past behind. The words never repeated the same way. Always different. Always urgent. I pressed my hands to the wheel. Cold sweat prickled along my spine. The fog pressed against the windshield, curling upward in ghostly fingers. Every shadow seemed too deliberate, too still. The trees whispered with movement, soft rustling that was not wind. I blinked. Static cracked against my ears. I could almost feel it vibrating against my skull, low and insistent. The air inside the car grew heavy. Taste of iron on my tongue. The fog outside thickened, curling along the guardrails. I tried to focus on the road. Headlights barely cut through the white haze, but the voices persisted. Soft, urgent. Warnings of something waiting. A presence I could not see. I blinked again. The words were gone. Only silence now, thick and absolute. Even the heater had quieted. The car's hum had vanished. The fog pressed close against the glass. I could see nothing but pale shapes moving in its folds. Or maybe nothing was moving. Silence stretched, heavy, oppressive. I tried to blink. The road was still, empty, but the memory of the voices lingered in my mind, pressing like frost against the skin of thought. I swallowed. Tires hissed softly on wet asphalt. Breath left clouds in the cabin. Every nerve strained, expecting the next whisper. I looked at the rear view. Nothing. Empty road behind. No shapes, no lights, no movement. I turned the dial again. Nothing. Static. Blank. White noise. The voices had vanished entirely, and yet I knew they were there, hidden in the fog, waiting in the bends of the pass. Always different, always soft, always watching. I pressed on, slow, headlights barely touching the curves ahead. Every now and then, the fog seemed to curl tighter around the car, brushing against the tires, the mirrors, even the hood. I shivered, feeling it. Even though nothing was there, the radio remained silent. The voices gone, leaving only the memory of what I had heard. Warnings of things in the fog. A presence patient, persistent, and unseen. I exhaled slowly. The road stretched before me, slick and winding. The fog thickened again, and though the voices had vanished into silence, I could still feel them, in the hum of the tires, in the chill brushing my skin, in the way the mist seemed to shift just beyond the headlights. I blinked, silence, and I drove on, knowing the words could return. Any bend, any curve. Static, whispers, fragments of something waiting in the fog. Silent now, but patient, always patient. The road narrowed along the ridge, slick with mist and cold night air. Fog curled low, pressing against the tires and guardrails. The mountains loomed silent, dark shapes against the sky. I rounded a curve and saw it. Someone or something, standing at the edge of the drop, tall, still, facing upward. I slowed. The headlights barely touched the figure. The air grew colder. Breath left clouds in the car, mingling with the mist curling along the road. I blinked. The figure didn't move. No wind brushed its clothes. No sound echoed from the ridge. Only the faint rustle of trees far away, swallowed by fog. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. Sharp and deliberate, the figure remained. Tall, thin, watching. I blinked again. It stretched. Or maybe the mist stretched it. Limbs elongated. Thin as smoke, bending impossibly toward the drop. I swallowed. Cold air pressed into my lungs. The fog twisted around the guardrail. I could smell wet stone and pine, sharp and damp. A soft wind whispered along the ridge. I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but when I turned, nothing. I stepped closer. The figure leaned, almost imperceptibly. Its edges rippled, wavering like heat over asphalt. The air seemed to hum around it, soft but insistent. I blinked, and it vanished, not like a person walking away, not like a shadow retreating. It thinned, stretched, dissolved into pale mist curling over the drop. Gone. I swallowed hard, boots skittering over gravel. The mountain seemed quieter now. The road stretched endlessly, slick and winding. Every rustle in the trees sounded deliberate, precise. I blinked again, for a heartbeat. I thought I saw the figure of form in the fog, just beyond the guardrail. Edges faint, stretching thin. No face, no features, just presence. Patient, watching. I stepped back into the car. Door slammed. Tires hissed over wet asphalt. The fog clung low, swirling in soft, curling waves. I dared not look back. The mountains pressed close. Every shadow seemed to reach, thin and deliberate, just at the edge of perception. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it had been a trick of the fog. Maybe my eyes were tired, stretched, seeing shapes that weren't there. But the memory lingered. The unnatural stretch of limbs. The patient posture, the vanish into pale mist. I pressed the gas. The road curved endlessly, wet and dark beneath headlights. Every now and then, a flicker of pale haze drifted at the edge of vision. Not solid, not fully formed. A shadow lingering where it shouldn't be. I blinked, and I saw it again. A stretch of fog along the guardrail, elongating upward. Impossible geometry. Not quite human. Not quite mist. I swallowed. The air pressed cold against my skin. The tires whispered along asphalt. Every nerve in my body stretched in with attention. I dared not stop. I dared not look back. The figure, or whatever it had been, had vanished into the night, but the feeling remained. Patient, waiting, just beyond the guardrail, stretching thin in the fog. And I know when the pass is empty and the fog curls low, it waits again, a tall figure, stretching, silent, patient, vanishing into the mist the moment I approach. I blinked and drove on. The mountains pressed close. The fog curled tight. The figure lingered, somewhere between shadow and mist, always waiting, always watching. The road climbed steeply, slick with mist and the cold bite of night. Tires hissed softly against asphalt. The mountains pressed close, dark and silent. I shifted the gear and turned the key. Nothing. Click, click. The engine refused to wake. I pressed harder. The dashboard lights flickered weakly, then died. The air smelled damp metallic, like wet iron. Cold pressed through the windows, curling around my neck. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath my boots. Fog hugged the mountainside, curling over the guardrails and the slope below. The trees whispered faintly in the wind, soft, deliberate. Above the tree-line, pale lights shimmered. They weren't stars. Not quite. Hovering, floating, watching. I blinked. The shapes shifted closer, slow, patient. Edges blurred against the fog. A pulse of cold air brushed my face. I swallowed. Something moved in the mist around the car. Soft footsteps? Or nothing at all? Impossible to tell. The fog swallowed sound, leaving only my own heartbeat pounding in my chest. I leaned against the hood, cold metal pressing into my palms. The air smelled faintly of ozone, sharp and wet. Lights above pulsed faintly, reflecting in the wet asphalt. I could feel their gaze. Silent, patient. I tried the engine again. Nothing. Click, click. The car stayed dead. I backed away, boots crunching gravel. Every shadow seemed alive, twisting, stretching, curling along the fog. The lights above pulsed, brighter this time. A soft hum began, vibrating to the tires, the hood, my chest. I pressed my hands to my ears. The hum continued, insistent, low, pressing against my skull. I blinked, and the fog shifted. Something moved, brushing past the car, closer than any human should. Soft, deliberate, impossible. I stumbled back, hands scraping the wet asphalt. The hum grew louder, insistent. The pale lights above dipped lower. Reflections danced across the mist like liquid silver. I could feel it around me. A presence patient, circling the car. The fog clung to boots, legs, sleeves. Cold, damp, pressing. I pressed the key again. Nothing. The dashboard flickered weakly. Lights above pulsed brighter, hovering just beyond the tree-line. I blinked. A shadow moved beneath them, stretching across the fog. Thin, impossible, almost human in shape, but not. Patient, watching. I stepped back. The air smelled metallic, sharp, heavy. Breath came in short bursts. I tried to steady it. The hum flattened into silence. Only the softest of tires on wet gravel remained. But the shape lingered, just beyond the car, stretching in the fog. The pale lights above hovered, patient, waiting. I backed away toward the road. Every step sounded loud, deliberate. Gravel skittered beneath boots. The fog curled closer, brushing against the car, against me, almost alive. I pressed the key one last time. Click, click, nothing. I didn't turn to look back. I didn't dare. And then I ran. Tires hissed, boots skidded, gravel scattered. The fog swallowed the car, the lights, the figures circling in the mist. All that remained was the mountains, dark and silent, and the memory of eyes or presence, watching from above, patient, insistent, waiting. Even now, long after the engine finally roared to life, I feel it lingering. The hum beneath the tires, the cold brush of mist against skin, the pale lights hovering just beyond the tree-line. And I know that if I ever return to that steep incline, the engine may fail again. The fog may swirl heavy and damp. The lights may appear, and something will move in the mist. Patient, watching, waiting. The service road stretched straight into the mountains, overgrown and forgotten. Rusted signs leaned crookedly, warning of hazards long since vanished. Fog pressed against the trees, curling over the asphalt like smoke. I drove slowly. Tires hissed softly against the wet road. The air smelled of damp earth and moss. Lights appeared ahead, small, faint, weaving between the trees. They moved silently, traveling the length of the road as if inspecting it. Not headlights, not fireflies, something else. I blinked. The beams twisted and curved around the rusted signs. Shadows shifted beneath the glow, bending unnaturally along the ground. Every step of the car seemed measured against them. I stopped. The lights paused, hovering just beyond reach. The hum of tires on wet asphalt seemed loud in the heavy night. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. Fog curled around the tires, cold and damp against my ankles. The lights twisted and pulsed, moving closer but never touching. I blinked. A soft breeze carried the scent of metal and pine. Every shadow along the road seemed to twitch, reaching into the fog. I pressed forward. The lights shifted with me, gliding silently over the wet asphalt. The road stretched endlessly. Rusted signs leaned closer, whispering under the fog. And then, just as suddenly, the lights vanished. No movement, no glow, only the fog and the quiet hum of the mountains. I drove on, heart pounding. The service road felt alive, patient, watching. Every curve, every shadow whispered of something hidden, waiting just beyond the reach of headlights. Even now I feel it, a presence in the fog, lights weaving silently. Patient, I stopped on the ridge, staring up at the night. Stars glimmered faintly behind the fog, pale and constant. The air smelled of damp stone and cold mountain wind. Then something moved, a dark shape, blocking out the stars. I blinked. It drifted slowly across the sky, massive, impossible. Smaller lights pulsed beneath its outline, faintly, irregularly. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest. Wind whispered across the ridge, carrying the faint smell of ozone. The shape shifted slowly, deliberate, silent. I could feel the presence of something enormous. A shadow of sky itself, hovering, watching. The stars behind it seemed to shiver. I blinked again. The pulsing lights beneath it moved slightly, forming patterns I couldn't name. They weren't constellations. They weren't alive, but they pulsed, insistent, patient. I swallowed. The road beneath me felt smaller, insignificant. My breath came fast and cold. The wind carried a faint metallic tang, brushing my nose and lips. I pressed the tires lightly against the road. The shape lingered, massive and slow, stretching across the sky. It blocked out stars, swallowing their light. I blinked, and it shifted again. A movement too deliberate to be natural, too slow to be anything I could understand. I drove on, heart hammering. The shape remained in my memory, lingering above the mountains. Smaller lights pulsing beneath it, patient, silent, watching. The road stretched endlessly beneath fog. I passed the same mile marker again, and again, familiar, rusted, worn, but never the same. Symbols were etched into it now, new ones with every pass. Lines, shapes, letters I didn't recognize. I blinked. The fog pressed against the tires, curling over the asphalt. Every shadow seemed to shift, reaching toward the road. I slowed. The markers repeated, unending, stretching the road beyond sense. Every blink revealed new symbols. The air smelled faintly of wet stone and iron. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. Fog pressed against legs and jacket, cold and damp. I could hear the faintest rustle, almost like footsteps, but no one moved. I touched the marker. Cold metal, etched deep. A vibration hummed beneath my fingertips. Shapes flickered in the fog, bending with the new symbols. I blinked. The road stretched longer. Markers repeated. Symbols changed, new ones etched into the rusted metal. I pressed on. The fog pressed closer. Every blink revealed a new etching. Something was following the road, patient, marking its presence. The past was quiet, too quiet. The wind, the tires, even my own breath disappeared. Silence pressed against me, heavy and unnatural. I stepped out. Gravel crunched softly under boots. Fog curled around my ankles. Then came the clicking, faint, above, repeating, like small stones or tiny claws against the night sky. I blinked. The mountain seemed to lean closer, listening. Every shadow along the path stretched, bending toward the source of the sound. I swallowed. The clicking grew louder, then softer, irregular, insistent. The air smelled of cold stone and damp pine. I pressed on, boots crunching gravel. Every instinct screamed to leave, but I couldn't. Something waited, patient and silent, in the fog above. I blinked. A shadow moved against the mist, thin, impossible. The clicking continued. The silence pressed heavier. I could feel it in my chest. I drove on. The fog thickened, curling along guardrails and ridges. The clicking faded. The silence remained, heavy, waiting. Moonlight struck the cliffside, revealing carvings in the stone. Symbols, etched deep, glowing faintly under the pale light. The air smelled of wet rock and cold mountain wind. I stepped closer. Gravel crunched beneath boots. Fingers brushed the cold stone. A vibration pulsed through my hand. The carvings glimmered faintly. I blinked. Shapes appeared in the fog beyond the cliff. Figures, standing, watching, impossible in form, bending with the mist. I stepped back, heart hammering. The symbols glowed brighter. Touching them had awakened something. I could feel the presence of the figures pressing through the fog. Wind whispered across the cliff, cold and sharp against my skin. The gravel shifted under my boots, though no one moved. I blinked. The figures stretched thin, bending toward the carvings. Edges shimmered against the fog, impossible and patient. I backed away. The symbols faded, but the vibration remained. Figures lingered in memory, standing in the mist, patient, watching. I pressed on down the pass, every nerve taut. The carvings glimmered in memory, shapes bending in the fog. I could feel them, silent and insistent, even from a distance. The mountains held their breath. The fog pressed against the road. The symbols waited, patient, marking the presence of something that should not be seen. The road was empty, slick with fog and faint frost. Ahead, 3 trucks drove slowly, taillights glowing red through the mist. They seemed normal at first. I blinked. When I looked again, they were gone. The road stretched empty, only tire marks fading into gravel. I pressed the gas. The tires hissed softly. The fog curled along the guardrails. The marks of the convoy lingered faintly, then dissolved. I blinked again. Lights flickered ahead, like distant stars caught in the mist. I slowed instinctively. The trucks appeared, 3 red dots, moving in perfect sequence. I swallowed. Each time I passed the curve, each time I blinked, they vanished. No sound, no motion, just a memory of tire marks, fading like breath in the cold night. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. Fog pressed against ankles, damp and cold. The mountains leaned closer, silent, patient. I pressed my hands to the hood. Cold metal. I blinked again. The convoy vanished once more, leaving only emptiness. I drove on, heart hammering. The road stretched endlessly, repeating, folding back on itself. I could feel the watches of tires long gone. The memory of lights, red and patient, haunted every bend. Even now, when fog curls low, I feel it. The trucks moving silently, vanishing, patient, waiting. Thin wires stretched across the pass, glinting faintly in the headlight glow. No poles, no supports, just metal suspended, slicing the fog like silver threads. I slowed. The tires hissed against asphalt. The air smelled of damp metal and cold stone. I reached out. A finger brushed a wire. It hummed, soft at first, then vibrating through bone and skin. Impossible. No source. No origin. I blinked. The fog curled closer. Shadows twisted around the wires, stretching along the asphalt. I stepped back. Gravel crunched under boots. The wind whispered through the pass. The wires hummed again, low and insistent. I blinked. Something moved in the fog beyond them, thin, elongated, almost human in shape, following the thread silently. Edges shimmered, impossible, patient. I pressed on. The wires vibrated faintly, brushing against the car. Every blink revealed them again, crossing the road, curling into the fog, soft pressed against the chest. I dared not stop. I dared not touch them again. The fog carried their presence, patient, deliberate. Every curve of the pass seemed marked by them. Even now, I feel the hum in my bones. The thin wires stretching across the road. Patient, watching. Every glance in the mirror revealed it. A figure seated in the back seat. I dared not turn. Every blink, every movement. The seat appeared empty. I slowed. The fog pressed close against the windows. The air smelled of damp leather and cold mist. The tires hissed softly on wet asphalt. I blinked again. The figure returned, pale, seated, patient. Edges blurred with fog curling along the glass. I tried to look directly. Nothing. Empty seat. Only the faint pressure of presence. I swallowed. Every nerve stretched taut. The fog twisted around the car, brushing doors, mirrors, hood. A faint hum vibrated through the cabin. I dared not blink too long. Every glance in the rear view, and the figure appeared. Every turn of the wheel, every flicker of headlights, and it lingered. Faceless, patient. I pressed the tires lightly against the asphalt. The figure never moved closer. It never spoke. It waited, watching through the rear view. Even now, in empty streets far from the mountains, I catch a flicker at the edge of my vision, a shadow in the back seat. Patient, silent. The station sat at the side of the pass, lights flickering weakly. Pumps clicked into place, though no one drove them. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and cold metal. I stopped. Tires hissed on asphalt. The fog curled around the building, swallowing the edges of the lot. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. The windows reflected dim light, showing nothing inside, and yet shadows moved, soft shapes shifting behind the glass. No sound. No door opened. I pressed a button on the pump. It clicked. Nothing else. The air hummed faintly, like electricity through fog. I blinked. Shapes swirled, bending against windows. Edges blurred, impossible, patient. I swallowed. Every instinct screamed to leave. But I watched. The shadows moved deliberately, twisting across the lot. I stepped back. The fog pressed closer. Lights flickered again, then dimmed, and in the glass, I thought I saw movement behind me. But the lot was empty. I pressed the tires lightly against asphalt. The pumps clicked into place. Shadows lingered, patient, waiting. Even now, I remember the flicker of movement behind glass. The station empty. The air thick with presence. Silent but patient. The reservoir lay still beneath moonlight. Fog curled across its surface, curling into the mountainside. Cold pressed against my cheeks. Above, a pale disk hovered. Silent, floating, reflected faintly on the water below. The surface never settled. Ripples spread slowly, though the air was still. I blinked. The disk shifted slightly, moving closer with each blink, edges smooth, impossible. I stepped closer. Cold water pressed against boots and jacket. The fog hugged the dam, curling like smoke. The air smelled of wet stone and ozone. I blinked again. Ripples stretched outward. The reflection pulsed, bending the fog and water alike. I swallowed. A hum vibrated faintly through the air. Not loud, not harsh. Insistent, patient. I stepped back. The disk hovered, silent, slow, almost curious. The water shimmered beneath it, impossibly still yet moving. I blinked. Edges seemed to blur. The disk reflected nothing, yet everything. The mountains, the fog, the silent pass, all mirrored in pale light. I pressed on along the road. The fog pressed closer. The disk lingered above the reservoir, patient, unmoving. Even now I feel it, hovering in memory, over water that never settles. A presence above the mountains, pale, silent, waiting. The valley opened before me, fog thick along the slopes. The tires whispered softly on wet asphalt. I thought the road was empty. Then came the screeching, brakes slamming, metal twisting, echoing across the mountains. I blinked. I spun the wheel. There was nothing. No wreckage. No lights. Only tire marks stretching across gravel, fading into fog. The smell of burned rubber and cold stone lingered faintly. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. Wind whispered through the trees, soft and deliberate. The fog pressed low, curling around ankles. I traced the tire marks. They ended abruptly. No wreck, no skid, only silence and mist. I blinked. The screeching echoed again, soft, distant, impossible. I pressed back into the car, heart hammering. Tires hissed against asphalt. The fog seemed heavier, pressing against the hood, against my chest. The valley swallowed the sound, yet it lingered in my memory, long after the marks disappeared. I drove on. The screeching remained in my mind, patient, unseen, waiting. The path stretched ahead, dark and winding. Each curve felt familiar, too familiar. I blinked. I passed the same bend again. And again, the mountains repeated. Trees, rocks, guardrails, all cycling endlessly. I slowed. Headlights illuminated the same marks in the asphalt, fading into fog. A pale light hovered above the ridge. It pulsed gently, then brighter with each loop. I stepped out. Gravel crunched under boots. Fog pressed cold against ankles and sleeves. Every instinct told me to leave. I blinked. The light hovered lower, glimmering in the fog. Edges blurred against the mountainside. I pressed forward. The road repeated. Each blink revealed the same bend, the same rocks, the same impossible curve. The light hovered closer, patient, silent. I could feel it pressing against the fog, bending space around the road. I drove faster. The loops continued, endless, twisting the mountains. The pale light pulsed, always there, always watching. I swallowed. The fog pressed against the windshield. Every blink confirmed the truth. The road had no end, and something waited, patient, silent. Above it all, a dark curve opened before me. There at the edge, an old man stood. A lantern flickered in his hands, casting no shadow. I slowed. The fog curled low, brushing boots and tires. The air smelled of smoke and damp earth. I blinked. His face never showed. The lantern swayed lightly, casting pale light across the wet asphalt. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. The fog pressed close, soft and damp. The man waved slowly. Edges blurred impossibly thin. The lantern flickered brighter, painting the fog in pale orange. I swallowed. Every instinct told me to move. Every nerve screamed. I stepped closer. The lantern cast no shadow. The man did not blink. His face remained impossible, smooth, patient, empty. I blinked. He was closer, or perhaps I had moved forward too fast. The edges of the lantern light shimmered in the fog. I pressed back into the car. Tires hissed. The man did not move. He did not blink. The lantern flickered once, then dimmed. I drove on, heart hammering. Even now I feel the memory. The lantern swaying. The man waiting, faceless, patient. The scenic pull-off appeared, swallowed by shifting fog. The valley below vanished in white mist. The air smelled of cold stone and wet pine. I stepped out. Gravel crunched beneath boots. The fog curled along the ridge, soft and deliberate. Shapes moved within it, larger than trees, gliding silently past. Edges blurred against fog. Impossible. I blinked. The shapes shifted, curving, bending, patient. I pressed forward. Every step sounded too loud, echoing across the fog. The air pressed cold against my skin. The mist clung to my sleeves and boots. I blinked again. The shapes seemed to follow, moving through the valley, silent, watching. I stepped back into the car. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. The fog swallowed the overlook. Shadows lingered in memory, patient, unmoving. Even now I remember the shapes gliding silently, the fog curling along the valley, the silent presence waiting.